Well, a huge part of your seminary experience, and definitely a huge part of our online class, is the term paper. And as I've been teaching the last few semesters, I've developed a guide to help students, I hope, avoid common pitfalls and to do as well as you can on the paper. I've posted those to this week's unit, and the name of the guide is simply A Guide to Successful Research Papers in Biblical Studies. So as you print that out for yourself, let's walk through it together. I've really tried to outline the most efficient steps that I think you can take to writing the best paper possible. The first step is to simply understand the nature of a research paper. And this sounds simplistic, but a lot of students get hung up right here. They never quite get the definition of a research paper. A research paper is an engagement with the biblical text through the lenses of major modern scholarship. Major modern scholarship. So your goal is to enter into conversation with major modern scholars on the Gospel of Mark to hew out which camp you think is right. So this is not a sermon, and this is not a devotional. I can't tell you the number of papers I get that aren't research-based. It's just someone reading the Bible and reflecting on it. Is there value in that? Of course. This is a graduate class, so this is less about engaging with the text and more about engaging the scholarship around the text so that you can become conversant in that scholarship. Well, the second step after you understand that is to choose a topic. That topic might either be a larger theme in the Gospel of Mark or a specific passage in the Gospel of Mark. I want to encourage you to choose a passage because it makes for more efficient research. You can flesh out a theme that emerges from that passage and make other connections to the larger gospel. But unless you're a really seasoned writer and just want to tackle a larger project, I would say choose a passage that interests you, and from that you can make bigger connections. After you choose the passage, I would encourage you to construct 3 to 5 initial questions that grab your attention. What you're doing is you're beginning to focus your research. You don't want to simply be reading all over the place. It'll take too long. So you want to craft some questions that you want to answer in your research so that you can look at and in sources that will help you get at those questions. I've included some examples there in the outline, such as that will help you get started. If this passage has a corollary in Matthew or Luke, how does Mark individually shape the material? How does this passage fit into primary theological themes in Mark? How does this passage contribute to Mark's narrative and theology? So sometimes asking those sorts of broad foundational questions will spur your thinking to generate some of your own about a specific text. Well, the third step is then to compile a list of sources. And I've got very specific requirements for research sources to make sure you're really doing graduate level research. First is to use at least 8 scholarly sources. They should be from the world of contemporary scholarship. Commentaries, books, and academic journal articles. Now to that end, I want to include here, I've listed sources to totally avoid. Internet sources are off limits. No websites are allowed. That's not graduate level work. However, a wonderful tool is provided by the seminary and the Lee community, and that tool is called the ATLA database. And your seminary account gives you access to ATLA through the Lee library, in which you can download journal articles on your passage or topic that will really help you with your paper. In fact, if you really master ATLA, you don't necessarily even need to go to the library. Typically there's enough good recent stuff on what you want to do in ATLA. Whole Bible commentaries are off limits, Matthew Henry, etc. Works published before 1970, because I want you to be involved in the conversation happening now. Study Bibles are not sources, and CD-ROM or electronic sources don't count. Note number 3, that one source can be taken from a Bible dictionary. The Anchor Bible Dictionary is a great example. It's a great source to turn to. Bibles are not considered one of your sources. Concordances are not considered one of your sources, nor are lexicons. So the best place to begin, commentaries, ATLA. And my hope is, of course, that the resources, particularly the articles that we're looking at in the various units of the course, can be helpful to your paper. That's why I try to give you a broad array of sources in the weekly coursework. Please, please take those and use them for your paper. They are valid sources. After you have a list of sources together, the fourth step is to compile and to categorize your research. Now, there are a lot of ways to do this. I'm going to explain to you how I do it. Some of you will remember the old note card method from the day before computers, in which to write a research paper, you might write a bit of research or data on one side of the note card and then the source on the other side. I essentially do that by using a Word document. I create an outline using my questions for my text on a Word document, and then I go source by source and fill in that outline. Just with my book or with my article, I'll type in real time information, data, or thoughts that fit that rubric from my research sources. Usually I color code my research so I can keep it really clear what's coming from where on my page. And you'll see that I also create a me category. So often you'll be researching and suddenly you'll have an aha moment. You'll have your own thought. I have a category in my Word document for my own thoughts, so I can make sure to keep those distinct from my research. After you've done your research, the fifth step is to develop a thesis statement. This happens along the way, of course, and I've got some nice examples there of good thesis statements and bad thesis statements. The point of the thesis statement is to summarize the argument you will be making in your paper, what your conclusions are. So you're packing your end goal, your end conclusions into your thesis statement there. And then 6, you will develop a sentence outline, and I have an example of a sentence outline that I've included on the online platform. A sentence outline is simply an outline of your statement, but in complete, conclusive sentences. So it's really helpful, and this will save time if you start thinking in this direction up front. So you're thinking in terms of the major movements of your paper in complete sentences so that you can see the building blocks of your article. Step 7 is to write the first draft, and you see my notes there on an hourglass approach, which I think is a very effective way to write a paper. An hourglass approach starts broad with the Gospel of Mark and then goes narrow. So if you're writing about a particular passage that relates to discipleship in Mark, you would start broad by talking about just a short page or two, the importance of discipleship in Mark. Then you're going to show how that theme is signified in your passage, and that's where you do the meat of your work. And then you go broad again, like an hourglass, to show how your findings contribute to discipleship in Mark overall. So, and again, I've got some nice examples there, along with a few hints on footnotes. And then finally, step 8, fine-tune for the final draft. And this is where you're going to make sure those grammatical errors are absent. Many of you should employ a proofreader, and you're just going to get everything ready to turn in. And you've got a paper format there so that there's no guesswork about what I'm looking for. Unfortunately, plagiarism is not all that uncommon, even at the seminary level. In fact, I think in January, I think 3 students failed my class because of plagiarism, so you definitely want to pay attention to that. I'm paying attention to that. But otherwise, I think there's enough here in this document for you to sink your teeth into to really prepare yourself to write a good paper. If you have any questions, just feel free to email me or call me so that we can get those answered. Take care. God bless.